So as we lean into this text together, I'm curious what some of your nicknames were growing up. If anyone wants to just shout them out. What were the things that people called you growing up? If you had any cool nicknames.
Turtle.
Turtle.
Buddy.
Buddy.
Work. Over.
I was always Keith Aroni. I don't really understand that. I was Keith Aroni, and some of my close friends in college always called me Keithster, Chief Keith. And then now, I would probably say most of my family just calls me Keith, K-E-E-F, Keith. So that's my nickname. But there's an ancient Ashanti proverb from the African coast that says, humans came to seek a name and nothing else. Names matter. For some Ashanti people on the African West Coast, it's customary for a parent to name their child based on the day of the week on which that child was born. Many Ashanti people believe that kids born on Monday will be mild-mannered and peace-loving, but boys born on a Wednesday will grow up to be violent and aggressive. I read a recent study in the Journal of Psychology that studied Ashanti prison inmates with violent offenses. And they found that the majority of the prison inmates were born on a Wednesday. In other words, their names functioned as scripts for their lives. Ultimately, the way that others perceived them and the way that they perceived themselves impacted the way that they lived. Names matter. American Puritans held a similar belief about names. Believing themselves to be the new chosen people of God, Puritans named their children accordingly, with names like Moses and Esther, and they even named their kids things like temperance and chastity. Names matter. One of the most complex naming traditions is that of the Mohegan Native Americans. For the Mohegan tribe, they believe that a person's name should change throughout his or her lifetime. So at birth, infants are given a specific name descriptive of the place or the circumstances of their birth. Around adolescence and the teenage years, the family and society can bestow a new name on that person based on their experiences or their personality. And throughout the person's life, society and family will continually bless them with new names that describe their achievements and experiences. Thus, as people grow in life, so do their names. I know from my own experience that names matter. The story about my birth that my family has told for years is that when I was born, my grandma ran around the hospital from nursing station to doctors to even visitors' rooms, telling everybody, my grandbaby's a preacher. And that was the story that claimed me, and the naming that claimed me. Our names speak to our expectations about who we are and who we will become. Our names reveal our family roots, cultural heritage, our personalities, and our life experiences. Names matter. They matter because they function. Names function to influence our attitudes. They affect experience. Names function. For the Ashanti and the Puritans, names functioned prescriptively to determine their experience. But for the Mohegan and Native Americans, names function descriptively to reflect a person's life experience. Names matter because names function. Looking at the text today, I wonder if the fault of the people in Exodus 32 has to do with names. Specifically, names for God and the way that their literal and exclusive naming of God function to limit the experience of the divine in their lives. The Exodus writer clearly takes the side of Moses on this one. But let all of us imagine for a moment that we are in the camps with the people. For 40 days and 40 nights, you have not seen or heard from God. Moses, your leader and God's mouthpiece, has been up on the mountain in the clouds, and you haven't heard from him. And you are truly afraid, for with Moses on the mountain away from you, you can't see God. And all your neighboring tribes have gods that they can see. All the people call out to Aaron, come and make gods for us who will go before us. And before you know it, your voice is mixed in with the crowd. You feel their fear that perhaps God has left you. and you are alone as you journey forward? So with Aaron's support, you join the crowd, melt down all your gold, and cast an image of a calf. Now we can condemn those people as totally wrong. But I learned from my ethics professor in divinity school that instead of condemning the opposing side as totally wrong, look for what's right in their argument and start the conversation there. So what is right about what the people do? First of all, if you look back at the scripture in the bulletin, the word that the people use in that first verse when they say, "Come make gods for us," that word gods is Elohim, which literally does mean the plural of God, gods. But that same word Elohim is used to describe God throughout the Bible. In the beginning, when it says that God created the heavens and the earth, that word is Elohim. So it's ambiguous what the people are talking about. And later, a couple verses, when they say, "This is the one who brought us up out of Egypt," throughout Jewish history, that epithet, "the one who brought us out of Egypt," is always attributed to Yahweh. So I propose this as one way of reading this text. The people are not making images of other gods and worshiping them. They are misdirecting their worship of Yahweh by thinking they can pin Yahweh down in the image of a calf. Moses returns from the mountain, sees what they've done, and charges them with the sin of idolatry, of casting in gold one single image of Yahweh as if they could pin Yahweh down. So perhaps the people's fault is not that they liken God to a calf, or better translated, a young bull. The fault is that their image became literal and exclusive. That is the sin, when we think that our names can capture the divine mystery, when we think we can pin the holy down. Thomas Aquinas wrote, "All affirmations we can make about God are not such that our minds can rest in them." Our minds cannot rest in any name for God is always greater. And we must remember that any names we bring for God are metaphors and analogies. God is like a bull because God is strong and fertile, ever creating new life. But God is also not like a bull. For a bull is dumb, and we can tame it and even kill it. And God is so much more. Was God angry that the people compared God to an animal? I believe no. The Bible is full of animal imagery for God. Jeremiah and the psalmist say that God is the eagle who hides us under her wings. Jesus said that God is the mother hen who draws us in. Hosea says God is the mama bear. The gospel writers say that God comes and descends as a dove. And the writer of Revelation says that God is the lion and the lamb. In other words, animals are adequate analogies, appropriate in metaphor. They help us find new ways to talk about and talk to God until we rest in them. And then they become idols. When our names for God become literal and exclusive, they become idols. And God, God's self, charges us to tear them down. What will it look like for us as a people to tear down the names and images that we have been given and that we have rested in? Now, as hard as I try to resist it, the name and the image for God that I've been given by the Western Church is that of an old, bearded, white male king and father. Now, one of the most beautiful contributions of Jesus is the name Abba. It is a name of intimacy and relationality, and it's the name that we often translate as Father. But any critical theologian and Bible scholar will tell you that Jesus' use of Abba contains the fullness of both masculine and feminine energy, contains both fatherly and motherly attributes. So a name for God that Jesus made fresh and original and robust, we have made patriarchal, but only saying and interpreting it as Father. The name's function, literal and exclusive, talk about God that only thinks about God with male pronouns, that only names God as Father, It functions to reinforce patriarchy in our families, in our society, in our churches. It restricts women's access to power and to this very pulpit. In other words, there is nothing wrong with calling God Father. It's a beautiful image, as long as we remember it is metaphor and that God is so much more. And when we limit our talk for God, we limit our experience of God. And ultimately, we limit our experience of God in the women and the mothers around us because the names function. We can say the same thing about king. I grew up talking about God as a mighty king and a mighty warrior. But king language functions, it has functioned historically to sanctify master-slave relations and kinghood and earthly tyranny. In other words, when the only political name we use for God is king, then that limits how we experience God, and it limits our imagination of how power and government can function here on earth. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke says, "We must not portray you in king's robes, you drifting mist that brought forth the morning." The names function. And how we name God influences how we experience God, how we experience ourselves, and ultimately how we experience others around us. I wonder if many of us have lost the analogy, have forgotten the metaphor, and no longer is God like a strong father or king, but our minds have rested in that one image. Our churches literally erect the image in stained glass and in picture Bibles. I'm very grateful we don't have those stained glasses here. But I wonder if we, as the American church in the 21st century, I wonder if we have committed the same sin as the people of Exodus 32, the sin of literalism and exclusivity. The call of Exodus 32 is to reflect on our own golden calves. Have our names for God in our prayers and in our speech become so literal and exclusive that we have become comfortable and rested in them? What divine beauty and fresh insight might we be missing? When we limit our names for God, we limit our experiences. And to rest in any name, even a name given to us by Jesus, is idolatry. In Hinduism, God is described as thou before whom all words recoil. I wonder if God looks down at all the names and images that we use and sees how puny they all are. There is no name to describe the infiniteness of holy love. God is better than the best you can imagine. Now there's a vivid dynamic of this given to us by Henry de Lubac, who's a swimmer. He says that swimmers have to keep grasping at new waves and then letting them go to grasp at another new one. And let it go and grasp at another new one. And if a swimmer rests for even a second, they'll drown. So let us keep names like Father and King, but let us add to the list by grasping at more names. Names that function, names that bring in new and fresh insight and experiences about who God is. Maybe like the Mohegan Native Americans, let us bring names for God that change and grow as we grow and experience God in new ways. In their own experience, theologians have talked about God like this. Paul Tillich says God is the ground of all being. Rosemary Radford Ruther says God is the matrix sustaining and holding all of life. Wolfhart Pannenberg says God is the power of the future. Thomas Aquinas says God is the prime mover. The names function. So let us grasp for more names. Black theologian James Cone says God is the Black Messiah. Father Donald Gelpy says God is the holy breath. Mystic Hildegard has a vision of God as the fiery power. And feminist Sally McFaig says God is mother, lover, friend. The names function. So let us grasp for more names. As the scriptures say, Genesis names God as the creative breath and wind hovering over the waters. Exodus names God as the burning bush, the pillar of fire, the cloud of darkness. Elijah names God as the still small voice. Jeremiah names God as the faithful potter. And Proverbs says God is incarnate wisdom, crying out in the streets for justice. The names function. So let us grasp for new names. As the gospel would say in Matthew, God is the fisherman casting lines. In Mark, God is the sower casting seeds. In Luke, God is the great physician healing bodies. And in John, God is the Logos, the incarnate word made flesh. The names function. So let us grasp for new names. As the naturalists might say, God is the sun and the moon, the earthquake, the river, the lightning, and the deep, the morning, the noonday, and the evening. God is blowing wind, flowing fire, and shining light. The names function. So let us grasp for more names. The biblicists might say that God is the binder of wounds, the teacher of peace, the healer of the sick, the sustainer of the falling, the creator of life, and the deliverer of the oppressed, the first and the last, the Alpha and the Omega, the God of wonders beyond our galaxy. The names function. So let us grasp for more names. My grandma would probably just say it like this: Jesus, 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 the sweetest name I know. The Lion and the Lamb, Son of God and humanity, Lord of lords, Prince of peace, cornerstone, way, truth, and life. The names function. So let us grasp for more names. Some might call her Spirit, Shekinah, Ruach, Sophia. American Indians might say grandfather, grandmother, or great spider. The old folks might say shield and rampart, rose of Sharon, wheel in the middle of the wheel, bright and morning star, balm in Gilead. Our hymnists might name God as the unchanging hand, the font of every blessing, the amazing grace, the solid rock on which I stand. All other ground is sinking sand. The names function. So let us grasp for new names. And as we cry out as a people for fresh names and fresh experiences of the divine, we hear a voice answering back. I am the great I am. You cannot pin me down. Amen.